Good morning again to you all, and we are so thankful for your presence here today, being a part of our worship service. Many folks, as we said, are traveling and sick. We have a lot of folks that are sick around, so we're thankful that we have had a health enough to be able to be here today. We certainly pray for those who are not with us today due to some different issues going on in their lives. Last week, at least the unofficial start of summer began. Typically, it's usually around Memorial Day when we technically celebrate it as summertime. Even though it doesn't come until later on in June, according to the calendar, we started last week, and that's typically most of us do. I'd like to bring a lesson to you today, and maybe a strange title to you, but beware of summer. What are some pitfalls that might become our way during summer? We'll talk about that here more as we carry on. But summertime is the time for fun. It is the time for boating. You might be a boater, or you might go out fishing. Maybe you do different barbecues in your backyard and you invite neighbors and friends over. That's the time for all these fun activities. We went through a long and cold winter this year, and even our spring this year has been seemingly extraordinarily cold and rainy for whatever reason. So now the Lord has blessed us with beautiful weather, and as you see, and you can see on the map, the last several days and several days ahead of us are picked to be just fabulous, just wonderful, perfect weather. So a lot of folks are going to enjoy it. They're going to get out and enjoy this time of year, and I probably will too. I hope you do too. Hope we all get a chance to do that. Maybe you plan some kind of a camping trip or some sort of a getaway of some kind. This is the time of year where a lot of folks do that. School is out typically at this time, and so those that might be teachers or parents that have students that are normally in school have a break now. We have several weeks now ahead of us that will allow them to have summer break. Well, during that summertime and the fun that happens during summer, oftentimes God is left behind. No one thinks about God during the fun times of our life. And that's what we're going to talk about this morning. I want to look at 5 different things that we should be aware of about summer. Summer is a wonderful time of year. It's a time of relaxation in many cases and fun, and oftentimes vacations and being able to get away, do things that you can't do in the winter when it's snowy and cold and bad weather. Well, today we're going to talk about some pitfalls that might become on our way that we need to be aware of during this wonderful season that God has blessed us with. The first one I'd like for you to notice, and I call it the summertime busyness. Summertime is a busy time, isn't it? And I suppose that's why it seems to go by so fast. It seems like winter just drags and drags and drags on, but summertime just, boom, it's gone. And before you know it, leaves are changing and we're setting out pumpkins. You know, it just seems to be that time of the year, summertime, goes by fast. It probably is because we are so busy. But oftentimes, we are perhaps too busy. And summertime busyness brings about different festivals. There'll be downtown area typically has festivals, and in our town it does anyways. I'm sure there's going to be camping trips scheduled. Great. These things are wonderful. Sports is a big time of year for sports. Baseball is its peak season. The boys of summer, are playing baseball. And so we're going to enjoy some of that probably, and maybe even go take in a game or two. Great. Wonderful things. Social events. Somebody's going to invite you over for a cookout. Someone's going to invite you to a outdoor party of some kind. Somebody's going to have some kind of a social event going on, or perhaps you planned a trip. We're going to travel and we're going to go and see certain things, whatever your schedule is going to bring about. But sometimes summertime busyness encroaches on God. And we're reminded many times to be careful of that. In 1 John chapter 2, if you start reading with me in verse 15, the Apostle John says, "Do not love the world or the things in the world." Wait a minute. I love to fish. I love to boat. So there's something wrong with that? Not what he's saying. Let's read on. If anyone loves the world, what he means by loving the world is occupying ourselves with the pleasures of it. There are wonderful things that we can do in this world, and this world is a beautiful place. But yet he's saying, be careful of the influences of the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all the things, all this is in the world. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, pride of life, is not of the Father, but of the world. See, it's these influences that we have of the world. And the world is passing away, and the lust of it. But he who does the will of God abides forever. We can enjoy our summer. We can enjoy the planet that we live on. We can enjoy the fun and festivities that we might involve ourselves with. But just be careful and be on guard of falling into the trap of looking at this world as all there is to it. We've got to remember that we look for a heavenly home. This world is not my home, the song says. I'm just a passing through. But sometimes this world becomes our everything. It's everything about my life. It's everything that I involve myself with. It's what I spend my time involved in doing. It's what I put my money towards. It's all the things of the world. God is reminding us to beware of that this summer. To beware of these busy, busy times. In Romans chapter 8, Paul says it this way: "For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on things of the flesh." In other words, that's their focus. Their focus is nothing more than just the things of this world and all the pleasures that go along with it. They have got their minds set on that. He says, don't do that. These things they set their minds on the things of the flesh. But those who live according to the Spirit, well, they've got a different attitude. They have a different mindset. He says, for to be carnally minded is death. Why? Because even though our world is beautiful, and the water is beautiful, and it's fun to be on, and it's fun to fish, and it's fun to be a part of the hiking in the woods, and involving ourselves with the beauty of nature, it's going to pass away. It's not going to be here for an eternity, but we seek a home that does. And that's why this verse reminds us that to think about and set your mind solely on the things of this earth is death. But he says to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Now we start to see, he says, what life is really all about. It's not about the fun that I'm going to have this summer. It should be a part of that, certainly. But he says, set your mind on things that are spiritual and not things of this earth. Because carnally minded is enmity or hatred against God. For it is not subject to the law of God, nor indeed can be. So then those who are in the flesh cannot please God. If your focus and your whole life existence is based on the fun and the things that I can do on this earth, you have got your priorities wrong. You have set your mind on things that are going to pass away. And God is trying to remind us to beware of getting sucked into the worldliness that happens at this time of year. Be careful. You cannot be pleasing to God and your whole focus on the things of this earth. Too many times we're too busy for God, especially in summertime. That carries us to this next point, is sometimes we vacation from God. Are you going to plan a trip this year? Go somewhere? I hope so. But take God with you. Why is it that we sometimes forget God when we go on vacation? Is that a positive thing? Well, certainly not. How often do we remember God when we take a vacation? Do we take Him with us? Or is, well, this is my opportunity to escape. I'm going to go to some far exotic location. I'm going to the mountains. I'm going to wherever. And God is nowhere even in my thoughts. Do we seek locations where we can find a faithful church? I'll tell you, that is getting tougher and tougher all the time. There are parts in our country today, there are states in our union right now where there may be only a couple or a handful of faithful churches to attend. You have to be aware of that, and you have to be on guard of that if you want to take God along with you on your vacation. Sometimes the last thing in my mind is, wait a minute, is there a faithful place to worship? We're going to go to XYZ place, and we're going to do all these fun things. What about God? We forget about God, and oftentimes we vacation from God instead of with Him. Or we've even allowed and offered the opportunity to log in. You can be in Timbuktu somewhere. If there's internet access, you could be a part of our service today. Many folks that are sick today are on Zoom right now. They're hearing my voice right now. They're participating with their Bibles opened. Even though they may be in bed, sick, they're still able to log in and be a part of our service. You see what we've done? The church, we have bent over backwards to try to assist folks to help and worship God. And sometimes we don't even care. God is the furthest thing from my mind because all I'm concerned about is the wonderful fun that we're going to have while we're away. You see, vacationing from God is something to be very, very aware of. Jesus said it this way, the hour is coming and now is, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth, and the Father is seeking such to worship Him. Even though you do go on vacation, we can't vacation from God. But too many folks do. They leave and they're gone for 2, 3, 4 weeks, a month, whatever, 6 months. And God is not anywhere near their thoughts. Beware of summer. David says it this way in Psalm 95. "O come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us shout joyfully to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before His presence with thanksgiving. Let us shout joyfully to Him with psalms. For the Lord is great, and the great King above all gods. In His hands are the deep places of the earth." He's there with you. I don't care where you go, He says, God's with you. The heights of the hills, also He's there. The sea is His. He owns it. He made it with His hands. He formed the dry land. Oh, come and let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker, for He is our God. Are we taking God along with us this summer on your vacations? Or is God the furthest thing from your thoughts? Beware, folks, of summer and vacationing from God. Well, another thing that we can consider, we don't speak about this a lot, but the Bible does, is sometimes our apparel, our dress, in the summertime becomes a little bit risky sometimes. We need to be careful of that. That's something that we need to be aware of. Now, I realize, and I'm not so much of a fuddy-duddy that I don't recognize that fashions change. And I realize that. The thought of a lady wearing something like that today would just be, guess what? It's out of the question. I'm not wearing it. Okay, that's usually what most people say. I remember my grandmother lived with us in her later years, and I would come out wearing a short sleeve shirt, and she didn't like it. She would say, Darren Lee, my middle name's Lee, she always called me Darren Lee. Darren Lee, look at them bare arms. You know, she had this kind of a mindset in her dress style, that you should be covered from the neck to the floor, and only thing showing is just your hands, and then they'd put gloves on, you know, and so things change. I get that. Styles definitely do change. But what we have to be on guard of is sometimes, and seemingly, not always, but sometimes, summertime brings on this letdown in our dress. We become less interested in covering ourselves up. Well, some of those things can be helped. And modest apparel is something that the Bible does speak about. In 1 Timothy, Paul talks to Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 2, and starting in with me in verse 9. He says, in like manner also, that the women adorn themselves in modest apparel, with propriety and moderation. We're going to come back to those here in just a moment. Not with braided hair and gold and pearls, costly clothing, but which is proper for women professing godliness with good works. In a big picture sense, what's he saying? Don't bring attention to yourself with what you wear. A lot of folks bring attention to themselves, and they want, especially the opposite sex, to notice them. And that's why they do the things they do. Paul is warning Timothy to warn those Christians to be careful with those things, warning them to be modestly dressed, with modest apparel, propriety, and moderation. What does all that mean? Well, look at the word modest. The word modest doesn't necessarily mean the length of your clothes. It's the arrangement of it. Clothing, this is the definition, clothing well arranged, dignified, and reflects an inward reverence rather than showing off wealth or arousal to passion. You see, that's the point of modest apparel. It's to not bring attention to yourself. Even though you are beautiful and you have a wonderfully beautiful body, keep that to yourself. It's an inward thing. It's an inward reverence about that. This word, modest apparel, goes on in 1 Peter chapter 3, and speaking of that, he says, don't let your adornment be merely outwardly. In other words, he's trying to take our focus off of the fact that I don't have to look so flashy. Outwardly arranging the hair, wearing gold, putting on fine apparel, but rather the hidden person of the heart with a corruptible beauty and gentle quietness, a quiet spirit, which is very precious in the sight of God. He's simply saying how we dress matters. What we wear matters. How it appears to others matters. He's simply using this word modest apparel in that way. This word propriety carries the idea of correctness or decency or appropriately dressed. There are times and places for certain kind of apparel. If you were to walk the red carpet for the Academy Awards, they dress a certain way, don't they? They wouldn't come in there with jeans and a t-shirt. They're going to dress in a specific manner. If you go before a judge in court, are you going to go in there with your worst? Well, typically we don't. We do our best to look appropriate, correct. You see, that's the definition of this word propriety. And with moderation. Just because you have a beautiful body doesn't mean you have to show it off. Just because you're beautiful, don't let that be what attracts people. It's a self-control, moderation in how we dress. Careful with how we do these things. It's a self-control. 1 Corinthians chapter 8 and verse 9 says, "But beware lest somehow, through liberty of yours, you become a stumbling block to those who are weak." How so? Just because you have a beautiful body and you're beautiful or you're well built isn't necessarily the right thing to do, to show that off with the clothes that we wear. He's simply saying, don't become a stumbling block to somebody. Well, hey, I'm going to dress however I want, and if you have a problem with that, you just have to turn away and look the other way. That's what a lot of folks say. But this carries with the idea that I care about whether it's going to bring a stumbling block to you or not. With what I wear, I care whether or not it's bringing in some sort of a passion that should not be aroused with that. Men are visually stimulated. That's just the way God built us. And this typically is focusing on the ladies to be careful with how they dress. Now, men can do it too. I get that. But typically, he's referring this to the ladies because they can spark passion in men that quick. It doesn't take long. You see, dressing with moderation, the length and the style comes and goes. But it's about why I wear what I wear. What I'm wearing it for. Am I doing it to provoke and to entice you? So that you'll look at me and say, whoa, look at this. Look at that. That's what he's trying to remind us to beware of. Beware of our dress in summertime. Well, sometimes we need to beware of lowering our standards of behavior. We do go to parties. We do go to cookouts. We do go to festivals. We do go to all these fun things that are nothing wrong with them. But sometimes we drop our guard when it comes to our behavior. 1 Peter chapter 1 says it this way, "Therefore gird up the loins of your mind." In other words, prepare your thoughts. Be sober and rest your hope fully upon the grace that has been brought to you in the revelation of Jesus Christ. Think about what you're doing. Set your mind and make it appropriate for what you know you need to do. As obedient children, not conforming yourselves to the former lusts. In other words, you came out of that. You came out of that world where you didn't care whether you enticed somebody inappropriately or not. He's saying, you've come out of that. It's a former lust. And you did it in ignorance. But as he has called you to be holy, also be holy in your conduct. Because it is written, be holy, for I am holy. That's our call as a Christian, is to be living our lives in a holy manner. Not forgetting God, even though we do have times of fun. Take God along with us and don't allow our behavior standards to drop. Even if you're young, don't let that be an excuse to you. And that's really what he's saying here to Timothy in chapter 4 and verse 12, 1 Timothy 4:12. Don't let this fact that you're young be something you can just say, well, that's okay. I'm young, and you can just have to forgive me of that. No, he says, don't do that, but be an example in your conduct, in your love, in your spirit, your faith, and in your purity. Be an example to others. Even though you might be young, it doesn't matter. You can still be an example. Luke chapter 6 and verse 31 says, and just as men want to do to you, you also do likewise to them. Do unto others as they would do unto you. Lowering our standards sometimes in summertime can be something that we need to be on guard of. Final point this morning, I'll let you go, is beware of the sunburn. Now, Loretta is really fair-skinned, and she'll get cooked instantly. It just creeps up on her, and before she knows it, she is like a lobster. And so she is really fair-skinned. I can kind of get away with a little bit of it more than her because of whatever pigment in my skin is or whatever. But it is something that we have to be careful of. Ever had a sunburn? How did you get it? Most people don't set out to get burned. Now some do. They lay out in their little hammock or whatever, and they just intend on getting cooked. Well, it's not fun if you've ever been there. A sunburn is something that will be ouchy for a long time. Well, I think sometimes we need to be aware of that, but also from a spiritual sense, we have to be careful. 2 Corinthians 11 says it this way. But I fear lest somehow, as the serpent deceived Eve by his craftiness, so your minds may be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ. How does it happen? How does Satan work on us? It's kind of slowly and gradual, isn't it? Typically, you get sunburned because we're out working in the yard, we're at the swimming pool, we're camping, we're just kind of out and about, and before we know it, it just starts to work on you, and it creeps up on you, and then come nighttime, ow, you're cooked. You know then that you've been cooked. Well, it's the same way is how Satan works on us. Satan kind of creeps up on us and eventually overtakes us. We have to beware of his ways. 2 Corinthians 11:14 says, and no wonder, for Satan himself transforms himself into an angel of light. You see, he's subtle. He's crafty. It just kind of creeps up onto you. Before you know it, you've gone too far. Bible talks about this idea of wandering from the truth. And it's the same thing. Brethren, if anyone among you wanders from the truth, and someone turns him back, let him know that he who turns a sinner from the error of his ways will save a soul from death and cover a multitude of sins. Falling away from God is a slow, gradual process. It's kind of like a sunburn. It happens slowly. It keeps working on you. It gets a little worse and a little worse. And eventually, you finally hit the point to where you have wandered from God. Most people that fall away from God don't just wake up one day and says, I hate God and I want nothing to do with the church and I'm never going back. It's usually a slow and steady process. As the old saying goes, people are like cars. They start missing before they quit. They start to finally, can't be there in this week. And then it turns into 2, and then 3, and then 6. And before long, they have completely drifted away. It's those who wander from the truth. Beware of this gradual spiritual sunburn that we can get. Well, I hope you enjoy your summer. I really do. And I'm not such a fuddy-duddy that I said you can't have fun, because I plan on having some fun too this year. But we can do it in such a way that it doesn't bring about a lack of godliness in our lives. We can be busy this summer but take God along with you. Vacation from this place and go wherever you want to go, but take God with you. Be sure that you're not forgetting to worship God. And dress in a way that would be pleasing before God as He looks down upon us. Lowering our standards, and sometimes we have to be aware of those things. And don't let Satan's temptations creep onto you like a sunburn and burn you. I hope this has been a fun lesson for you, but I hope that you've taken heed to the things that the Bible says about these different attitudes and ways that we sometimes get sucked into the world's way of doing things. If you're here this morning and you're not a member of the Lord's church, we always extend that offer to you. Take this chance, this opportunity to make things right with you and God. Repenting of your sins, that's deciding to change my ways, turning from those sins, believing with your heart that God is who He is and Jesus was the Son of God, repenting of my sins, and then confessing the fact that I believe that Jesus is the Son of God, being baptized for the remission of my sins. I come up out of that water a changed person, and I carry on from there forward in service to Him. If you're willing to do that, we're willing to help you. If you're here today and you just simply need prayers on your behalf, let us help you as we stand and as we sing.